clients are signing an authority and being locked in and not understanding that they're being locked in. It comes down to value again. Like I said before, you only get one chance to sell, your family farm or whatever it is. We need to be careful of things like, windfall gains tax, depending on where the property is located. We need to be careful of, some of the other, taxes and things that are around.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners and Burke Britton Financial Partners.
This is episode number 121 of the Finances podcast. Today's guest is Vittoria De Stefano. Vicky, you've avoided me for many months to get you on the podcast. What's the story there? Why didn't you want to come on?
Hi, Jay. It has taken a little while to line up our diaries, hasn't it? Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And as I was just saying before we started, I've had a few of your colleagues, the Harwood Andrews crew, on, and it's been fun. I think that Harwood Andrews definitely should do their own podcast. We've got Tristan in after you today. He's in for to talk all things estate planning. But today we're talking sort of business and property law. But also we're going to talk a bit about you. If you've listened to any of our podcasts in the past, Vicky, you would know that first episode for anyone, we want to talk a little bit about you before we get to your area of expertise. So, Vicky, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up at Harwood Andrews? Let's go back as far as you want to go back. Where did you grow up? What was early childhood like? And how did you end up in property and commercial law at Harwood Andrews?
Okay, so... grew up in Geelong, went to Holy Family Primary School, so I grew up in Bellpost Hill, and then from there went to Sacred Heart.
Is Holy Family on Minerva Road?
Separation Street.
Oh, Seppo, okay, yep.
So have really fond memories of my time at Sacred Heart. Certainly, you look back, it sort of shaped, I think, who I was who I am, and learnt a lot about myself, and sort of always thought that I'd do law.
Was that because was your parents? Where was the influence in law?
No, so I don't come from a legal background or family of lawyers or anything.
What did your folks do?
So Dad worked as a purchasing officer, so at various places around Geelong.
Okay.
And Mum was working for a roofing company sort of in their administration. So definitely not, from a legal background. I think I watched too many movies or something.
Law and Order?
Law and Order, like the courtroom sort of argumentative sort of scene.
The Firm, Tom Cruise?
I think it was probably A Few Good Men, actually. It probably got me over the line. But I think it's just more that helping people and that social justice sort of element. So I then went to Deakin, did commerce law. Didn't take a gap year or anything, just went straight through.
But when you finished in high school, did you do law in high school? Was that what appealed to you? Or you thought, I don't know what I'm going to do, so I'll do law?
No, I always thought if I got the marks, I would do law. I certainly did legal studies and did well in legal studies. It's certainly something that I, you have your favourite subjects, I suppose. So I did well enough to get the marks, and I thought, look, I'll try commerce. So I sort of always knew that I had a bit of a business brain. I was definitely not a science person. So, and then, ended up with the marks and soon started and thought, no, I'm definitely here for the law subjects or the law degree, but certainly enjoyed the commerce as well. So
that's good. Our resident coffee delivery person is here, Amy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's all good. So Deakin Geelong, was it on the waterfront or was it the Warren Ponds campus?
Warren Ponds.
Okay.
Warren Ponds campus. So spent 5 years there. And then...
now, I'm assuming 5 years wasn't because you failed subjects and you had to come back for years. 5 years, so you did your 3-year degree, and then was it 3 plus? How did it end up being 5?
No, so it was a double degree. So, it was 5 years for both the commerce and law.
Because Because I did 4 years at uni, but I did 4 years at uni because I failed a subject and had to come back for a fourth year. So you finished your 5 years. You also mentioned that, or in some of the things we talked about beforehand, you were working in retail. Was that right during that time?
Yeah, so through sort of, the latter parts of school and through uni, I was working at Target at what is now Westfield. And yeah, so spent, I think I was there for about 7 years over all the start to finish.
And you didn't think, I want a career in retail, that no, this is me, I've got to get out of retail and into law.
Correct, yep.
Five years of law. What happens when you've finished your degree? You've got to go and do articles or something of that nature. What happened after that?
Yeah, we now call them like graduate lawyers or trainees, but no, back in the day I was an articled clerk. So I actually started when Price Higgins and Doyle Considine were going to merge. I was going to be their article clerk, and then they rang me probably about 6 weeks before I started and said, we're merging with Harwood Andrews. So yeah, I ended up, that's how I ended up at HA.
So for the uninitiated, an article clerk, is it, listen, you're the general dog's body that does everything that no one else wants to do, or is it is there something different? Is there some sort of formality of that internship?
Bit of both. Yeah, I think it's now we call them sort of graduates and we have more of a structured program. But back in the day, I was an article clerk, so I spent most of the year telling people what I did and that I wasn't a journalist. Yeah, but it's really just practical training for your first sort of 12 months.
When you say you're not a journalist, does that mean that you're in the courtroom taking notes?
No. So because you said you were an articled clerk, everyone just assumed that, I was like, oh, but I thought you did law. And I said, I did. It's just what they call us for the first year. So, yep.
And I'm not sure that I knew this, but have you been at Harwood Andrews the entire time? Because that's quite unusual, is it not? Like in a quite a, I'll say, in a incestuous world of sort of legal firms, people generally chop and change and move around. You're the minority in that you've been at the one place for your entire career.
Yeah, I'm a bit unique.
Yeah.
Now, so yeah, I've actually just clocked up 20 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
You're aging yourself now, Vicky.
Yeah, I am.
And so, when you did that internship, were you in commercial and property law then, or did you have a breadth of experience? Did you move through sort of family law or estate planning and then settle on commercial law, or were you there straight from the day one?
So I did a little bit of disputes or litigation. Probably did a short stint in that and realised that it wasn't for me. So I did do my whole sort of, graduate year in business and property and really enjoyed it. It was certainly a steep learning curve.
What did you enjoy about property and sort of commercial, or what was it that was appealing in that area of law?
I certainly liked the client contact. I think as a junior lawyer, and I think as in a regional setting, we're probably lucky we're not stuck in the background or in the back room doing discovery or that sort of thing. You are meeting with clients, talking to clients, and I certainly enjoyed that aspect. But I think that property and business, particularly the area that I'm in, is a lot more business transactions. It's about getting things done and seeing outcomes and seeing things turn over sort of fairly regularly. You've got a 30, 60, 90-day settlement, or you've got a lease or something that you're trying to get done. It is nice to get some satisfaction when you build that relationship with a client through the time that they're, I suppose, going through whatever their project is, and then you get to the end and you get to see an outcome, which is always good.
It's funny that the perception of lawyers, and I'm sure you get this and you've got it over your 20 years, is that relationships is probably not what people immediately think of when they think commercial and property law. They think contracts, they think documents, they think legal mumbo-jumbo. They're not necessarily thinking, I'm having a relationship with a person that's actually helping me through these transactions. And one of the things I've loved about our interactions with Harwood Andrews, and I'm a little bit more than 20 years in this business, but had lots of interactions with your team and a lot of your colleagues over time. One of the great positives of your business and the types of people that exist in Harwood Andrews is that they're very relationship focused, which maybe do you think it's a Geelong thing? Is it a regional thing? Do you get the same experience? I know you live in Melbourne. I think you said that off air, but does the same experience with relationships occur in Melbourne as it does in Geelong? Or
I think so. I mean, I think the best, I suppose, the best clients to deal with are the ones that call you first and say, I'm thinking of doing this. And they bring you into, I suppose, the preliminary discussions and the planning, because I think you can then not set things up, but you can sort of structure things in a more, more favourable way, I suppose. Clients that come to us and have signed things and said, please, this is where I'm at. And you're like, oh, okay, how do we backpedal from this is sometimes harder. So I certainly think that it's about, I certainly hope that clients think they can call, get an answer and, or email and get an answer. And, it is about just being able to be relatable to people because, it's a big decision for a lot of people to come in, even whether you're signing a will or buying a property or buying a business, it is a big decision. So it's about, understanding people, and not all clients are the same. People have different risk profiles. People have different aims and goals and things like that. So it's not a one size fits all arrangement, I suppose.
It's probably hard to have people come to you with those kinds of queries if you don't have a relationship. And I've talked about this plenty of times on the podcast over the years, that one of the superpowers of someone like you is actually having that relationship where people will proactively... Thanks, Job. Where people will proactively actually come to you with their queries. They know where to go rather than seeing it as purely transactional. And I think one of the things that both financial planning industry and also probably the legal industry have done poorly over time is have the perception that it's very transactional, whereas the value is in actually having relationships, having someone that knows your situation inside out and back to front. And so when they come to you with that query, the property purchase, a contract for a business that they want to buy or sell, you've got the complete context of what they've done in the past, how it might impact the balance of their situation. And I think a lot of people lose that context, and one of the reasons why I think the things like this podcast are great for the listener is that it gives people a little bit of a peek under the hood of what law, what commercial law, what property law, what it's actually all about. And if you boil it down, it's very much about relationships.
Yeah, it is. And look, I think people probably come to us when they're going through something big in their life. You don't buy and sell a business every day. It's pretty stressful for some people. I talk to business owners who are selling a business that they've built from the ground up, and it's like, this is your baby. You don't get to do this every day. Let's get the terms right. Let's do it properly. Let's do it. You only get the chance once to sell and to set the price for something. So you are dealing with people when they're really stressed, and you're speaking to them sometimes 2 and 3 and 4 times a day. So you do build that rapport, with them. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the other superpowers that you have, and why, if we've got clients that are making decisions, whether it be on property or whether it be on a business, is that you can be super objective. You can be detached, that even though you've got a great relationship, hopefully, with that client, you can be emotionally removed from it and make sort of objective, clear-minded decisions, which again I think is where the value lies in actually seeking someone with experience, but also that you've got a great relationship with. Yeah. You mentioned we might maybe take a little bit of a direction into some of the key mistakes. You mentioned one there about like the hurdles that people are presented with when they're selling a business that they're emotionally attached to, that they've grown, it's been their baby over a period of time. What are some of the most common mistakes? So let's talk about someone, for example, hypothetically, they've grown a business over time and they're looking to exit that business. What are some of the key issues that people are presented with, and what are the key things that you will look out to provide them with, risk mitigation, and also make sure that they make the right decision?
Yeah. I will say I work when someone comes to me and says, I'm looking to sell my business, I would say it's a team approach. So certainly, working with accountants, working with other advisors, and that the client is working with is really important. It's not just about us, and I certainly don't want to be the lawyer that comes in at the end and undoes a deal that's been done. It's about, because I appreciate that I am a part of the puzzle, but I think from the client perspective, it's about planning the sale. So it's 12 months before you look to sell. It's about looking objectively at your business. Have you got a lease that's in place that is at a good rent, that is there for so that you've got some goodwill. There's a lot of site goodwill in a lot of businesses, so making sure that the lease is there. Have you got all your employees on the right type of contracts or awards, or are you paying them the right amounts? The financial statements, like I say, it's something that to be worked through with the accountant. But I mean, a balance sheet or a set of financial statements will tell you a lot about a business and the health of a business. So, sometimes you can tidy up some of the things that are on the balance sheet because it's the first thing that a purchase is going to be looking at. And I think the other thing is that if you can do it in your own time and not be stressed by the scenario and not rush it, then you certainly it makes the transaction a lot easier. Otherwise, you're trying to deal with all of this and a purchaser and a potential that your deal may not go ahead. So
it sounds like the being proactive in the decision making and then getting to it as early as you possibly can. The best time to do that planning is probably yesterday. The next best time is today, rather than when you've made an agreement, you walk into Vicky and say, Vicky, I've already agreed on terms and value, and I'd like you to draw the contract up. That's probably not the ideal scenario.
No. But also, I mean, having all of your information, like the first thing, nowadays we sort of, operate electronic data rooms for a lot of our transactions, having your contracts that you have as part of your business ready to go and to upload to a data room, whether you're got rosters or employee data and that sort of thing, like just having all of that ready that that you'll be asked those sorts of questions is really important as well.
If someone was contemplating selling a business, do you have some form of a sort of a checklist of the things that they should be considering to get ready to come and talk to you? And how might they get a hold of that? Is that something that they could engage you to? Is it available on your website? Or what are some of those key things that they, other than what you've already talked about, that they really should be ticking off? You mentioned financials, you mentioned valuation, you probably thought about, do you have an accountant that's actually capable and understands your business? Whereabouts can they find that checklist for information? Are they best to come to you to talk about that, or how do they get a hold of that?
Yeah, it's certainly it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So, yeah, certainly a conversation probably would kick it off. And then, I certainly have a checklist that I send to clients depending on the nature of the business.
Yeah. What are some of the most common mistakes you see? Again, without talking clients or implicating anyone, what are some of the most common issues you see when people are looking to sell a business? What are some quirky ones that maybe you've seen?
I've had some clients who thought that they could sort of have their financials presented in a certain way. And, depending on who you're selling to, some people looking at them are pretty sophisticated. And I'd say the financial aspects of, like I said, I work pretty closely with accountants on that. At the moment, it's probably the employee. Everyone's really nervous around employees and whether they're being paid the right amounts or, right rates and things. So, certainly calling people. It's really hard to have a casual employee these days, just with changes in the law. So it's, people will say, no, they're casual, but they're really part-time. So that sort of tends to come out as part of discussions. We often see people, so we'll run a search of the Personal Property Securities Register, and I'll say to clients often, have you do you owe anyone money? And no, I don't have a bank or don't have anything. And you run a search, and there's secured parties that are there, be it lenders or people that are providing goods on credit, and that have registered security interests. So clients are often surprised by that. And then I suppose it's about being upfront with purchases. So most vendors will have to give a warranty to say, look, these are terms and conditions, or these are this is the state of my business. And those statements have to be true and correct for a period of time. So if you can't make a warranty, then it will come. Purchasers will find out. It will come back. So you work through that warranty list in a contract and say, is everything here true and correct? Otherwise, it will come back, and people will come knocking on your door post settlement. So
yeah, and as you said, I think every business transaction is different. There's a lot of movement in my world, in the financial planning world, a lot of businesses changing hands, sort of post Royal Commission, and a lot of change in education requirements. And one of the things I've noticed is that there's maybe existing principles in a sale will be maintained in the business for a period of time. Do you see that a lot, where you have maybe the vendor continuing on in that business for a period of time? And how do you deal with that in terms of contracts to make sure that the person they've received their funds for the sale of the business, yet they're still incentivized to continue to hand over the relationships and the intellectual property? How do you deal with that in terms of that from a contract point of view?
It's really hard. I think I see that vendors struggle with that because they say, no, that's fine. I'll stay around and I'll help out. But when you're not in control anymore, and you particularly if you've been a long-standing business owner, it's really hard to get the balance right, is what I see with vendors. It's like an assistance period, in any other type of business. Slightly different because there's an employment contract involved, but I tend to find, purchasers want to get into a business and vendors want to get out to
yep.
a bit, from an assistance period perspective. The ongoing employment contract is hard. It's got to be relationship based. I think purchasers need to give, their, shall I say, the principles of the business, a bit of clear runway to kind of understand that they're there for a purpose. They're there to help transition the business, but it's hard when you're no longer in control. So it's really about having the tasks and the KPIs and the expectations set out at the beginning.
And so that'd be something, again, that you would deal with early. You sort of deal with the pain. I think about sort of any contract. My view is that it's always better to deal with the difficult conversations early rather than have it unsaid and come back and bite you in the backside at a later point. One of the other areas, so that's talking about sort of sale of business, and I'm not sure necessarily whether this is in your purview, but sort of buy-sell agreements. Is that more in the estate planning brief, or is it in sort of business commercial law buy-sell agreements? So what to do in the event of sort of death, disability, or exit of a partner. Is that in your wheelhouse?
Not necessarily in my wheelhouse.
I'll have to save that one for Tristan when he's in about an hour.
Yeah, maybe. Look, we certainly look at it from the perspective of shareholder agreements. So, looking at, what happens, how you value a business if a partner's, incapacitated and that sort of thing. But it
maybe just on that, let's pause for those people that don't know. What is a shareholders agreement? So we're about to get into business with a couple of people. We've got a few mates, and maybe we're friends, maybe we're unrelated, but we wanted to get it into business together. We want to start a business, and we think it's a great idea. What should people be doing in terms of having agreements that stipulate people's roles, responsibilities, but also what happens if this whole shebang goes to shit?
Hell in a handbasket.
Yes.
Okay, so there broadly we would call it an investor agreement. So it could be a partnership agreement if you a partner, or if you're in a partnership. It could be a unit holder agreement if you've got a unit trust, a shareholder agreement if you've got a company. But basically, it's an agreement that you hope that once you sign it, you put it in the bottom drawer and you don't need to look at it. But I suppose it's really a matter of saying when we were all in agreement about how we were going to do business, we sat around and we said, this is the reasonable way of dealing with things. So, how are you going to operate a bank account? What sort of, how many hours are you going to devote to the business? Can you have another job in the meantime, together with this business? How are you going to value the business? Like, what's the methodology that you would adopt? Things like how do you make decisions in the business? Can you employ family members, for example? And is that a unanimous decision, or is it, can one person make a decision? Those sorts of things. The key aspects, though, are really how you resolve disputes, and ultimately how you value the business if you want to get out. Things like, can you serve notices and those sorts of things to try and get out of a business. So, yes, if you're all equal shareholders, that's one thing. But I suppose it's also, you can control a business with with one of these investor agreements if you have the ability to make decisions. So, they're certainly very powerful documents. And it's, like I said, when everybody was acting reasonably, we thought this is how we should resolve disputes or how we should do things. So,
well, most of us are pretty excited when we start a business, aren't we? And we're very optimistic. Nothing's going to go wrong. We're never going to have any disputes. No one's going to die, become disabled. No one's going to have any family law issues that maybe impact on the business. But as you know, having done this for 20 odd years, and myself having done it for a similar period of time, what can go wrong will probably go wrong at some point, and that investment in time, energy, and money to actually put those things in place is absolutely invaluable. The hard part is a little bit like, I consider it a little bit like insurance, in that we spend money on things that we hope we never have to use. You said you put it in the bottom drawer. You hope you never have to actually claim on your life insurance or your disability insurance or use that shareholders agreement. But I tell you, when you've actually got the scenario where you need to use it, you think, thank God I had that.
Yeah, and I think speaking to clients and saying, it will cost you X dollars for that document, they sort of look at you and say, oh no, that's expensive. And I say, but if you're in a dispute or you're in litigation, you will wish you had this document. So it's not a one size fits all. It's about sitting down and getting buy-in and getting agreement from all the business owners on, yes, death and disability. Do you want to be in business if, the worst happens? Do you want to be in business with with the spouse of one of your business partners, or do you want the ability to buy that interest yourself?
Yeah, and if you do buy that interest yourself, what are you paying for it, and how are you going to fund it? Yeah, the buy-sell insurance buy-sell agreements and the interconnection between those is super important. And you mentioned before that collaborative approach of it's a team game, and I couldn't agree more. Every one of the conversations that I have with clients, it is about saying we need to get the right people with the right experience in to actually help with this. So I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, but we can certainly work together and aggregate to get you the best possible outcome. Again, a lot of that work is done at the front end. It's what would you call it? It's almost deferred reward. You have a bit of that pain up front of time, energy, maybe some difficult conversations, so that at a later point there's protection. Yeah. Can I take another segue into property? So obviously, and I mentioned, and they won't mind me mentioning it, but my in-laws have recently had a property sale, and Harwood Andrews and your team has helped out with that transaction. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is maybe some of the common misconceptions when it comes to selling a home, and why for example, people wouldn't, rather than use a legal firm to do their conveyancing and their legal work, why they wouldn't just go to the corner conveyancer to have that done. So someone's, in my in-laws example, they're selling a family home that they've had for a number of years, and they're moving into a retirement village. Why would we use Harwood Andrews and a property lawyer ahead of just a backyard conveyancer?
That's a good question. I think it's the difference. I mean, I think that there are some great conveyancers in the Geelong market. We certainly pride ourselves on being able to, if things do turn pear-shaped through a transaction, we have got the support of a dispute resolution team. You are dealing with a lawyer, so we have other training that I suppose conveyancers don't have. I suppose at Harwood Andrews, in our property team, we've got a number of clerks, but we also have property lawyers. So, some properties are dealing with things like, old law titles or boundaries that aren't, what they used to be, or adverse possession claims and things like that. They are complex. And I suppose, not every property transaction goes the way that it should. So I suppose it's a bit of, like we said before about an insurance policy, it's an insurance policy that, if things don't go the way that you expect, that, we have the ability and the team to be able to provide you with the advice.
So what are some of the most common problems that people are presented with in a property transaction, whether it be a simple one or a complex one? What are the things that you're generally presented with that have the potential to go pear-shaped?
The common one at the moment is tenants that won't move out. Just with changes to the Residential Tenancies Act, if we see a contract now with a tenant, the radar's definitely up on, are you actually going to get vacant possession? Have the right notices and things been served on?
What was the change, and was this a change sort of post-COVID?
So there's some new changes going through at the moment, which probably strengthen tenants' rights even further. But, it's about vendors can, serve notices on tenants to say, I'm selling my property and I need you to, find another property. We need to make sure that those notices are served with the right time frame, particularly if you're buying this as a family home to move into. If a vendor doesn't tell the tenant that they're selling a property, then, that certainly causes a problem. We do see a lot of adverse possession claims, so slithers of land that aren't included on the title, or, the back laneway that's been fenced in but it's not actually on the title. So we obviously say to clients, go and measure the block. We hope people do that. But you measure from the corner, measure the fence lines and those sorts of things. So that's a something that comes up pretty regularly, particularly in older areas. We often see nowadays, banks not being ready to settle on the day. That's we all do our best, but sometimes, particularly when you've got like a sale and a purchase and something else lined up. They're the common ones, but yeah, it's never dull. Every day brings a new scenario.
What have you seen in the sort of land development space? So have you seen that increase or decrease in recent time? Obviously, there's a lot of changes with land tax of recent time. What are you seeing in terms of development? Like someone with some land that they want to come and they've got a great idea that they want to subdivide it. Do you get those clients regularly? And if so, what are the more common issues that you're presented with when you have a client like that comes to you?
We're probably being presented with, particularly in the outskirts of Geelong, sort of people knocking on doors and saying, I've got these amazing buyers for you. So that's that of itself, and that is with the potential that the buyer will develop the land.
These mostly Melbourne real estate moguls that are coming down, putting offers to sort of regional or semi-rural areas around Geelong?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of management of expectations with clients on that. Sometimes, as I say to them, if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. Long-term settlements like a 5-year arrangement, and they're saying, but I don't know if I want to wait that long for money. So
maybe let's just talk about that, because I've got a number of clients in that situation where they've had a knock on the door. They have some Melbourne real estate people that say, we'd like to buy your property, but we want to buy it on terms over. So talk a bit about what you're seeing presented to people in terms of offers, and what the risks and the benefits of accepting something like that are, and why it would be important, if that happened, to first have a chat with Vicky before you went and signed or did anything.
Yeah, I certainly think that, like I said, we're doing a fair bit of managing of expectations with clients. It's not a usual sale, shall I say. It's not like you put a for sale sign up, you wait your 60, 90, 120 days, maybe 6 months, depending on the property, and then you get to bank your check and move on and find somewhere else. These are some of this is highly speculative. Usually there's like a heads of agreement or an authority that's being presented, and then clients are signing an authority and being locked in, and not understanding that they're being locked in. It comes down to value again. Like I said before, you only get one chance to sell, your family farm or whatever it is. We need to be careful of things like, windfall gains tax, depending on where the property is located. We need to be careful of, some of the other, taxes and things that are around. But ultimately, it comes down to how quickly you want your settlement to take place. And not everyone, I suppose, is willing to wait 3, 4, 5 years to finalise their transactions. So
what are some of the inherent risks of accepting a contract where it's a 4 or 5 year settlement, and assuming there's a deposit paid, there's some sort of a funds paid initially with a settlement in over a prolonged period of time? What are some of the common risks that people should be aware of in thinking about that?
I think the key thing is that once you start getting your payments in instalments, that we need a different type of vendor statement. You flip into being a terms contract, so that's always should ring alarm bells for, or people should be aware of that. I think that, you hope that you've got a purchaser at the end, and that they, that they're a credible type company or entity that's purchasing. So, you can't bank your money before you have it, is in effect what I would say to clients. And I think the other thing is just it depends on what conditions are put to you. Like, is it subject to the land being subdivided? Are we looking for planning permits? Particularly, sort of in that sort of Golden Plains sort of area on the outskirts of Geelong. Yep. We've got planning scheme amendments that are going through, and all those sorts of things that we do need to be mindful about. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of movement. My mum's actually out in the Golden Plains. She's right on the corner of Golden Plains, and mum would give me a call probably every month or so and say she's had someone else knock on the door and say that they'd love to buy the property. And I, as I've said to mum, and as I'd say to many of my clients, that it's so important that you get support and you get advice around what you should be doing. Exactly what you said. What is your place worth? What are some of the other implications that you should be considering before you go and sign on the dotted line? Vicky, what else in your wheelhouse are you dealing with from a day-to-day basis, other than what we've talked about with some of the sort of shareholders agreements, property and commercial transactions? Is there anything else that you're seeing commonly at the moment that consumes a bit of your time?
Probably a lot of commercial leasing. I think a lot of people think, oh no, the lease is just something that you sign. I don't need advice on the lease. And it's just what you do. But I certainly think that it's really important to get advice again on the leasing, like on the commercial terms of a lease. Is the rent the right rent to be paying? What are your ongoing plans for your business? How long does your lease term need to be? Are you about to sell the business? Do we need to make sure that there's enough of a term on your lease to support the goodwill valuations of the business? Post-COVID, I think it became really clear or really apparent that the relationship between landlords and tenants was really important. It's probably something that I think, again, should be viewed as a bit of a partnership, because those that had the better relationships, I think, received more, shall I say, concessions, but the landlords were much more understanding than otherwise. But I think the key thing that people probably don't, there's probably two issues that come up. One is make good. So at the end of a lease, removing all of your fit out. And
a good one.
Tenants always think that, no, my fit out's amazing. And landlords are like, well, people won't want your fit out. So I suppose.
Can you just touch on that? Because again, I've made many mistakes in leasing arrangements over time with businesses and in premises. Mm. One of the things that I didn't understand was that the landlord would want the premises returned back to its original form. So all these fantastic dividing walls and beautiful. They say I don't want that. I want everything back to its original state. And guess whose expense that is at? Yep. It's at mine. But if I didn't read the contract or didn't have Vicky have a look at it, that would be news to me at a time when I probably don't have the capital. Like I'm probably thinking I don't have those funds or hadn't factored that in. How often does that happen?
Fairly regularly. Tenants will say, oh, but I've put this amazing fit out. I put down the flooring. I did like a ceiling grid for the, the ceiling. I've got this, I've replaced the carpet not that long ago, painted. Like surely I can just take my furniture and walk out. And the costs of defitting a premises are pretty extensive. So we certainly have a lot of discussions about that, like how.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility. Do your homework. Ask questions and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PP Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.